Welcome back to Two Reviews. Today we have the Moondrop Starfields, and where less is more. Now, disclaimer before we start the review, this unit was lent to me by a friend. I'm not affiliated to any shop or brand, and this review is of my own opinion. If you want to know about my preferences and the setup used to do this review, I will leave them down in this description below. Now, just a little bit of a background about this Moondrop Starfields. These are supposed to be the younger brother for the KXSS. They use the same sort of shell, just with some paint on them. Just this nice blue purplish paint on the shells. And yeah, they're tuned against the Moondrop Harman target. So Moondrop has its own sort of target that they've defined. I don't remember exactly what it's called. I'll put it somewhere here if I remember what it is. And yeah, so TLDR about the sound is that it's a very nice, actually surprisingly relaxing Harman target sort of sound. It's not as shouty as the normal Harman target, and it's not too bassy. Overall, it's just nice. Alright, so starting off with sound, so bass, it has an emphasis on bass in general. So sub bass and mid bass is lifted, and there's quite a nice slam and punch, and speed in the bass is quite what's it called? It's a bit of a more typical dynamic driver sort of speed. It's not too fast, it's not too slow. If you listen to normal top 40 or EDM in general, you won't find these bass lacking, and I don't think that they're too slow either. I think they're just there in terms of speed. Texture and resolution is also very good, and yeah, but I do think the Starfields do fall apart a bit if you listen to faster music. So something like from Dragon Force or something will probably be a bit of an issue with Starfields. So just keep that in mind. So it's good bass, but it's not the fastest bass either. Going into the mid-range, because of this emphasis in the bass, the mid-range, especially male vocals, have this very nice body that I really like. It's not too thick and not at all thin. And surprisingly, although these are tuned somewhere above, based off of the Harman target essentially, upper mids don't sound shouty. So female vocals are also very nice. They're quite smooth, and they never fall behind in the mix. Although the Harman target usually, the mid-range is a bit, how do I say this? It's quite scooped out compared to the rest of the frequency range normally. But vocals and instruments never feel like they're out of the mix. Instruments also have pleasant notes. There's quite enough texture and detail also in the mid-range. Now going into treble, the treble on these are very smooth. There's no other word for it. It's just pleasant treble. I don't think how do I say this? I don't think I really face any sibilants at all, which is quite surprising, especially considering that my ears are quite treble sensitive. I just find these to be surprisingly good, especially for the price that they are at. And even generally speaking, as an IEM, I think they just tuned amazingly. Yeah, there's no splashiness, there's no huge peaks in the treble. I've just have no complaints in the treble. I think these are great. They're not the highest end in terms of resolution or detail, but I don't think it matters much because it's just tuned very nicely. Now going into soundstage and imaging, so soundstage is quite wide. So if this was my head, soundstage is just there. It's not outside of my head yet, but it's also not too closed in, so it doesn't sound It doesn't make me nauseous. And the center image of the sound, if this were the center of my head, is somewhere 3/4 away, if this were my nose. So it's not exactly at my face level yet, but again, it doesn't make me nauseous. And it never really sounds congested. Now, imaging wise, it's also quite good. Imaging, I can pinpoint instruments up to a 30-degree accuracy. And yeah. Now going to build quality, just a PSA, the Starfields are very well notorious in terms of how easily the paint chips. So the Starfields, as I mentioned earlier in the review, are based off of the younger brother of the KXSS in terms of not only price range but also the fact that they are using this exact same shell as the KXSS but repainted. Yeah, so this is some sort of blue purple-ish paint, and they tend to chip very easily. At least that's what I've read from HeadFi, SBAF, and local forums. People have started using nail polish to coat the shells so that they don't chip easily. I haven't tried that myself because this is not my own unit. But if you do want to get a pair of these, you might want to take care of them more than you would normally on your usual IEMs. I don't know how much the nail polish mod actually helps, but keep that in mind. So if you want to use these as a daily driver, if you're a person who tends to ding around their IEMs everywhere, you might want to reconsider. Cable wise though, so these are essentially just a recolor of the Moondrop Pansies. I've had experience with the Moondrop Pansy cable. I've had a pair of KXSSs with Moondrop Pansy cable for the past year. I've had no issues whatsoever. But so I think as long as you don't severely abuse them, they'll just last quite fine. And these are anyways detachable IEM, so if they do fail, you can just replace the cable. Now, we'll just go over the nozzle a bit, and the nozzle is actually quite wide, and it doesn't have any notch whatsoever. So Eartips, if you buy them at the size of the nozzle or maybe a bit too large, they might fall off. This was especially prevalent with the KXSS because the KXSS had a slippier shell, but I think because of this paint, it has become a bit more sticky, I suppose. But the stock ear tips that they come with, these hold quite well in the nozzle. I've never faced the same issue I had with the KXSS, where the ear tips sometimes just stay in my ear when I pull these out of my ear. So I don't think it'll be much of an issue, if at all. And if you ever do experience that, you can just get some very thin double tape, put it around the nozzle. That should resolve it. Speaking of the nozzle though, so Moondrop has given out a PSA saying that the filters that they've given out for the past IEMs, any dynamic driver sort of IEMs, they tend to clog up with earwax or moisture very easily. So if you ever start to feel any imbalance in your IEMs, you might want to replace the filter first before claiming your warranty. So that's why Moondrop actually provides you with extra filters and this tweezer also in the packaging. So yeah. Now in terms of accessories that it comes with, it doesn't come with a lot of accessories. It actually only comes with 6 pairs of ear tips, and which is like which is not a lot, and it does come with this nice little case. It's not as nice as the case that comes with the KXSS, but I think that this will just do adequately. But one thing to note is that the case is actually quite thick, even if you squash it down, so it may or may not fit in your pocket. It doesn't fit in my jeans, so you may have to bring around a small, what's it called, a small bag of some sort to just carry on these IEMs with this case. Okay, so conclusion, and maybe a bit of a comparison with the KXSS. So if you're looking at an IEM at the $110 price range, or I would say even at a $150, $190 price range, 150 I would say, $150 price range, and you like a slight V-shape, sort of sound, and a very smooth V-shape, mind you. It doesn't have the usual drawbacks of it, like of the hi-fi tuned V-shape sort of sound. Get these, especially if you will be using these more on a sitting down basis. Then yeah, by all means. I did forget to mention though that one down one downside of the KXSS is that the noise isolation isn't the greatest, so just keep that in mind. A bit of a comparison with the KXSS, they do use the same shell, but supposedly they do have a different driver inside. But yeah, so sound wise it's easiest to just say that the KXSS are a bit more technically proficient. uh, they're less warm, and the KXSS are less warm than the Starfields, and the Starfields are significantly smoother, I would say. I can listen to these pretty much all day. Meanwhile, the KXSS gave me a hard time after an hour or two of listening. I think that's mostly because of the lack of the shoutiness in the upper mids. So yeah, I think that does it for this review. If you want to know what Brian thinks of these Starfields, I'll link to his video right here. And if you like it, if you like the video, just like it. If you want to see more content like this, subscribe. And yeah, leave what you think in the comments below. Thanks for watching.